I won't do Fathom.
Okay. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us. How's your day been? Busy?
Yeah, it has. Thankfully.
Yep, always a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Not always. I'm tired of busy.
Chris, where are you out of?
Franklin, Mass.
Nice.
Yeah. This is my first Zoom meeting on my iPhone, so I have absolutely no idea how to I can see you guys.
There we go. You can see
Yeah.
Hunter. Hey, Hunter.
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent. How are you?
Yeah, can't complain. I'm getting through the week, so it's going well. How about yourself?
Very good. Yep.
Good.
Besides the weather, everything is good.
Yeah. What's the weather looking like for you?
I'm in Montana, so it is about 34 degrees and snowing right now, which I'm totally bummed about.
Minnesota here. We got our snow yesterday, so I know how it feels like, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
How many minutes?
All right. Starting to get people rolling. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Jennifer. Just gonna keep this meeting delayed just for a moment so people can log in. Hi, Colton. Starting to roll in. Okay. Okay. Well, let's get rolling, Dan. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nick Fox, and my associate and partner here is Dan Buss. We are working with the Elite Pro Service Group, a peer group, in our opinions, is the best peer group in the industry. And so a little bit about myself is I started in the automotive industry when I was 12 years old and had the opportunity to become a partner in a business and grew that into 4 locations and sold it this last April. And so now I work with a bunch of awesome independent shop owners and we help them improve their business and make their dreams come true. So Dan, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Dan Buss. My shop was in Highland Park, Illinois. Only had one location. Thought about doing multiple locations, but my wife said no. But we had a pretty large shop, 16 bay, 14,500 square foot facility, doing all makes and models, but specializing in European vehicles.
Perfect. Do we have, so I want to thank everyone of you guys for spending some time with us today, but do we have any current multi-shop owners? All right.
Yeah, Nick, we have 3 locations in.
Perfect. So we want to keep this pretty casual. So if anyone has anything they want to chime in or ask questions, just please let us know. And we should have a great session here. So cool. So the first thing we want to discuss is, do I really need a shop, and am I ready to expand? So a lot of times, when we are a single shop owner, a lot of our egos get in the way and we think we need another shop to grow and be relevant in the industry. And so Dan's a prime example. Is he thought about adding another shop several times, but didn't for various reasons. Because oftentimes when you add another shop without being prepared, it creates a lot more issues and can ultimately sacrifice your current business. So Dan, you want to talk about a little bit about that, your experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is knowing when you're ready for a next shop, and do you really need a next shop, right? And if you're in a smaller location, you're a 3-4 bay facility, or even 6 or 7 bays, and you're at 95% capacity, well, it may be the time. When you're a year into a new shop like I was, and you've got 16 bays to feed, and you're at 70% capacity with your hair on fire, probably not a good time to do it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Some of the important things that you need when you are looking to add additional locations, if you decide to move forward. Um, First and foremost, you got to have the right people. You got to have the correct people on the right seat of the bus. Without them, you won't be able to do it. You need
Right.
to ask yourself, are you ready to transition into an ownership role as opposed to a management role? Because that's very important, right? You have to empower your people and be able to delegate tasks to them and let them accomplish them. They may not complete the job exactly the way that you would do it, but ultimately, if you give them the correct instruction and direction, they're going to do a good job,
Right.
or they're in the wrong seat of the bus.
I think the thing you need to look at when you start considering a second shop, or maybe you have 2 shops and you're thinking about a third shop, is my current shop at max capacity? Are we running efficient enough to take on another shop? Right. And do we have the cash flow to take on another shop? And I think one of the common mistakes that's made is we are still trying to fix problems in our first business, and then we go to our second business without fixing the problems in our first business. So when we look at going into that other shop, there needs to be a purpose why. We need to really know why we're going to go into the second shop, not just because my buddy has 4 shops and I want to be the same as him. Correct?
So who's got a good purpose in this group to grow into more shops, more locations? Anyone?
I got something for you, Nick. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm in my car.
Yeah, absolutely, Patrick. Let's hear it.
My goal and my purpose in adding more shops is to create opportunities for my employees. I don't want my best employees to find themselves in a dead end position where they don't see room for advancement. And if they're that good, I want to be able to keep them and be able to put them somewhere.
Now I can get on board with that. That is a great reason for expanding your business. So good for you, Patrick. Hunter?
Yeah, so I'm not a shop owner myself. I work for an accounting firm that works with a lot of auto repair clients. And what I would say is a lot of the main reasons they find are good reasons to expand is they're making a lot of money and they're investing in their future. And quite frankly, a good opportunity pops up. That a friend, a colleague, someone in their network is choosing to sell, and they have what it takes to not only take over what that location is doing, but they feel like they can improve upon it because, to Dan's point, they've really mastered what they're doing at their first location.
Absolutely. If you get to that point, absolutely. So for those of you that want to keep growing and add additional locations, we've talked about people already. Another very important thing is having a budget that you would share with your leadership team, right? Because you can't be everywhere all at once. It's just impossible. And and I would break it down into your operating budget, marketing budget as well, and then giving them the guidelines to help them be successful. Dan, how was your budget?
How was my budget?
Yeah.
Extremely good.
But you were able to stay on top of it, you and your wife. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and that I think is the key as we start looking at the next locations is having that budget in place. How much are we going to go in debt? Who's going to go in debt? Is it the company? Is it
I
me?
can reduce this real quick.
Where's that money coming from? Right.
What
We
do you want to do?
want to take out of our existing shop to feed the new shop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another important factor. Oh, do we have a comment?
No, what I was going to say is I've seen it many times with different people throughout pro service where they just haven't prepared financially, right? And all of a sudden they're bleeding their first shop to cover the bills on the second shop.
Yep, absolutely. And those can be scary times for sure. Another aspect that's very important, in my humble opinion, is making sure that you have your processes written and in place, and everyone has clear understanding on how everything works.
Couldn't be one of the most important things ever is having all of your processes in place, all the employees on board, everybody following procedures, and being able to go into the new shop, the next shop, with cut clear procedures. And everybody knows what their task is, what their position is, what their job duties are. And that's key. And without those procedures, and you're onboarding these new employees, and now they're in a new shop, things can go sideways quick.
Real quick, and I've seen it firsthand, is if you don't have those good procedures and guidelines in place, payroll, our largest controllable expense can get way out of control. So I was really quite the dictator on keeping our payroll percentage in place in my business. So.
Well, and I think the thing you have to realize too, when we look at procedures and we look at a budget and we look at marketing and we look at these different pieces of making this next step, is realizing that the demographics of where this new shop's going to be. It may only be 6 miles down the road from your current shop, but you could have a completely different demographic. So your procedures may need to be tweaked a little bit, and how you operate this shop may be a little different than your existing shop.
Well, great point. It could even go to your pricing strategy could change as well, right? Because you said different demographic, right? And maybe there's a really big competitor in tires, so you're in mechanical, or maybe you are heavier in tires in that new location as well. It just changes, and it can be, like I said, 6 miles down the road. It can be that close, and it's quite interesting when that happens. So, but if that's the case, that can affect your marketing budget and your operational budget for that new location as well.
Right. And I think that's key. I had a friend, actually one of my mentors in the industry, who really taught me how to run a shop. And he was all about procedures and everything was in place. And he went to a different state to try and open a shop, not even the state next to Illinois. He went way across and opened up a shop, and it didn't make sense. I mean, it was his procedures that he had at his original shop didn't work in another state. And his marketing and everything he was doing, because he didn't do his research on his demographics, and both with the staffing and with the clients. So
Yeah.
It was a miserable failure over 3 years. He was trying to run it remotely and then had to move there for a year to try and fix the business and could never get it under control.
Wow, quite the eye opener right there.
Right. So just being open to, yes, the procedures work at my current location, but I may need to alter them a little bit for the new location. We may be going into a higher end area, and I don't offer loaner cars at this shop, but I may have to at the new one, right? Because that's the clientele I'm going to have. Or there may be different types of cars. I only work on domestic and Asian at my main shop, but I'm opening up a shop in an area where it's 60% European vehicles in the neighborhood. I better start looking at European technicians and getting some resources for European vehicles.
It's a great point. You just really need to research your market. One thing that I'd say that the independent shop owner has an advantage is they're usually pretty ingrained in their communities and well known in their communities. But when you go to a new market, you need to make sure you research that market and figure out how you can still be ingrained in your community because it's very difficult if you're not familiar with it. And I experienced that firsthand in my business when I grew to another city, and I really had to hire some key people in that market to be that person because I couldn't be there all the time. I didn't want to live there and leave my family. So
You didn't want to live at that location?
I didn't want to live at that location. No.
So Nick, let me ask you. So when you came back into the family business, your dad had two of them, right?
Correct.
So what made you want to expand to four?
What made me want to expand it for four? Well, much like Patrick mentioned, initially it was an ego thing, right? I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I want to grow this thing and be the biggest guy on the block. Um, and a bunch of people for years and years are always saying, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And I took that literally. If I wasn't growing locations, my business was dying. As time moved on and I got into it more and more, like Patrick, I wanted to provide more opportunities for my employees, and then that way they wouldn't leave me for something else because there's nowhere for them to go. And it did work, right? I was able to promote from within often, and we were able to have better wages, better benefits because we had more income coming in. But there were some lean years as we grew, right? Because growing takes a lot of cash. A good friend of mine once told me, before you even open the doors, when you open a new location, you need $300,000 to $500,000 of cash just to make sure you're going to be okay. And my business was heavier in tires than a lot of yours. And tires are an expensive inventory item, but that's a lot of money just sitting there just to make sure you're going to be okay and can make payroll and pay taxes and all that stuff. So do we have any comments or questions yet? Anything that any of you want to discuss?
I got a question for you, Nick.
Yeah, Patrick.
So I don't know if I understood that right, but you started with two, and then you grew to four?
So yeah, a little bit about me, Patrick. My first job in the automotive industry was working for my dad when I was 12 years old. And he had two locations, and I grew up through the ranks and became a partner when we had two locations. It was a unique two location scenario because his partner ran one location and my dad ran the other location. So it was like they were almost two separate businesses. We bought out my dad's partner, and then we had two locations. And then we decided to add a third. And full transparency, we weren't ready. We didn't have all our process written down. We didn't have a good budget set in place. So I had to really scramble and hustle and get those things figured out as we continued to grow. And then adding the fourth location was much easier because I already had all that stuff in place. I already knew what to do.
You already answered my question.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
I have one. Nick, what financially kind of indicated to you, or maybe got you starting to think about opening up a new location? I mean, is there certain metrics or things that you started to click where you're like, okay, I think it would make sense to open a new one? Or I guess, how did you start to know financially you could do it is my question.
Well, number one, I had the belief in myself, right? But financially, our two locations were operating pretty well. We weren't, I mean, if you're at 100% capacity, that's a very rare thing. We weren't there, but we were busy most of the time. And we're producing, 20% net profit from each of our locations, which we were very comfortable with, especially with, the mix of tires and repair and maintenance we had. And so we decided that we would invest our money and grow into another location. And again, we had a friend that was ready to retire in a neighboring city and really wanted us to carry on his legacy. So it all just kind of came together at that point. But we learned that even though your friend is a good operator and they have a good business, they're not the same as you, and you're going to go in and try and implement change. And you've got to really work hard to build those relationships and that rapport to get those people on your team as well and help you move the needle forward.
Now, I did something very similar to Nick, where I had a friend who was about 4.5 miles away who was going to retire. Unique situation. I had a very large facility. I had a 14,500 square foot facility. He was in a 4 bay facility. So he was around for 50 years, but he had a big client base, but not huge because he was a limited shop. And he only did, for 35 years, he only did Volvo. And then he got into other Europeans. So what I did, rather than going by his shop, is I took over his customer base and we just moved them from his location to my location. So there was really no huge cost to me of buying another location, and I had the capacity. So it's another thing to think about if you have somebody in your town who's thinking of retiring and you have the capacity at your location of just taking over their customer list, taking over all of their daily operations, their warranty, everything, and moving that to your facility rather than taking on a second location. You know,
That is a good point. However, I would argue that as you add locations, and if you can secure the real estate when you purchase it, that your retirement plan can be much better.
yes, that it can. I'm all about real estate. So, but it's also the financial situation that you're in if you can do that at the time, right? At the time I did it, he didn't really, he wanted to sell the building to a developer. He didn't want repair, to be leasing. He wasn't willing to sell it, and it just worked out well. But going back to one point, I kind of want to talk about that you had mentioned about when you knew it was time. There's a lot of different ways to look at capacity, right? And like Nick said, if you're in a big building and you have a lot of base, it's hard to get to 100% capacity. But if you're in a smaller shop, you may hit capacity. You got to kind of figure out what is capacity, right? Am I maximizing my hours? Do I want to go into a second shop when I'm only at 70% capacity on my first shop? And do I want to have 3 shops, 4 shops, 5 shops at 70% capacity, or 2 shops at 95% capacity, or 1 shop at 98% capacity? Another thing to really look at as well.
Absolutely. I have a question for everyone. Does anyone know the most difficult phase of expansion? Is it from 3 to 4 or 4 to 6, 2 to 3? Does anyone know that answer? The one with the most risk.
1 to 2.
Who said that?
Stand up.
Awesome. One to 2 is correct. Great job. Right? Because you're learning. Like all these things we spoke about here, you're transitioning from a manager role to an ownership role. Get your budget in places, your marketing budget in there, get the right people there, processes in place, all these things.
One of the things we always say in pro service is if you're going to do 2, just do 3. Just already start planning the third one.
Yep, absolutely.
The second one's going to be the hardest. Absolutely, it's going to be the hardest. The third one is going to be a lot easier than the second one.
And even the fourth and fifth at that point in time, right? Because you've already got your leadership structure in place for the most part as you grow into those fourth and fifth locations. At that point, going 6, 7, and 8, you probably need to get a little bit heavier on your leadership because there's just more to do and more people to work with. So you kind of, as you grow from 2 to 3, profits begin to grow. 4 or 5, they grow a little bit, and then you hit 6, 7, 8, they go down a little bit because you're heavier on the top, and then it's just kind of this ebb and flow of growth. And but from 1 to 2, you have a huge learning curve, and then after that, it gets easier. So you're used to those ebbs and flows. And we've got colleagues in pro service that now it's like they're adding multiple shops every year. So
sometimes 2 a year.
Exactly.
TJ has his hand up. Did you have a question, TJ?
I do. Thanks, Dan. Hey, good afternoon, all. Question is, I've been debating. I'm a single owner shop at this time, right? So one of the things we have a very deep domain from a skill sets perspective at this one location. When you were inspired to open your second or your second, third, and how did you? What was the skill set level like? Did you have the fear that, hey, I may not get the same level of skill set that I need, or do you use one of your shops as your I don't know, your home base where, hey, if these guys can't do a heavy line, I take it over there. Like, is that a model to think of, or do you just keep a balanced skill set at all your other locations? That's one. And two, totally different topic, right? When you're looking for a shop, do you look for a shop that has, or this is just for me, right? Do you look for a shop that's already successful, or is there a downside in saying, hey, I'm getting a better bargain, better price, this is badly, poorly run, I can take this over and make it a better shop? Or is it
No.
easier, so I
Sorry.
can see
Yeah.
both pros and cons.
So
I
I
understand
can
you.
talk about the what shop should you buy. Nick, do you want to get a little bit into expanding to that second shop, and then I can jump into what type of shop to buy?
Yeah, thanks for those questions, TJ. They're great. I just want to start by saying, as you are looking at adding additional locations, you can slice this any way you want. But I like to refer to it as the McDonald's effect, right? Our hopes and dreams, and for ease on our own mental stability, is that each shop operates pretty much the same. So you have the same services in each location because it's easier that way. Now, if you don't have the right people for that, then you have to get creative and you might be pushing heavy line stuff to your original location. But then if we start doing things like that, you can't market each location the same, right? So if you can make it cookie cutter and provide the same services in each location, that's going to be much easier for consistency of service to your customers.
Okay, that really helps. So, again, these might be in fancy questions, right? So you may not, you're trying to cookie cutter, so that's a good way to think through. In my head, I was like, hey, if I get a heavy line job, because you never know what's walking in, right? Or something that comes in as a tune-up turns out to be a heavy line, right? Do I have one guy who's willing and ready? You comp him the right way, and he's willing to get on the company shuttle and go there and help that job versus towing it to this location. The challenge that I have is my volume, right? Since I'm not a dealership, I don't have 20 cars waiting for me when I walk in, right? There are scheduled appointments. We're pretty, we use TechMetric and stuff. People can schedule online appointments and whatnot, but still, you do have the ebb and flow that we go through. So keeping a high-paid tech online on staff at the second location or the third, right? That was going through my head as to, how could I afford it? What kind of balance would I bring in, right? Do I add a guarantee in there? And then on top of that, you get flag, right? So those were the things that was going through my head, but that really helps. Thanks, Nick.
You bet. And the second part, Dan, you wanted to chime in on that?
Yeah, and I'm going to jump back to that real quick. The couple of the things you can do as well, right, when you're looking at employing technicians within the shops is utilize the other shop, right? Maybe you have your best tech at your main shop, your original shop, and you have a job that comes into the second shop that they can't handle. You do move it over. In
Gotcha.
some cases, you have a floating technician, and
Yep.
I several shops that have a floating technician that the company has a box at each location for them, and they float back and forth where the demand is. So there's those options for our employees as well. When it comes to purchasing the shop, well, yeah, it makes sense if it's in the budget to buy a really good shop because you're buying cash flow. If they're running it well and they're making money and you can get it for the right price, I would be buying that shop that's very successful. Can you take a shop where, it doesn't have a good reputation, they don't have great equipment, it's kind of been, run down over the last 10 years because of a elderly owner or something along those lines? yeah, you're going to get a fire sale on it. You're going to get it for a great price, but how long is it going to take you to build that business up?
And I'll
And
tell
then,
you, for me, those are great points, Dan. For me, when I was looking for additional shops, I was looking for, I'm going to call them good businesses that didn't know how to make money, but they had a great reputation and they took care of their customers, because then I inherited their reputation, but they weren't good at making money. So I got a better sale price on the business because of that.
right.
Nick,
Sure.
sorry to touch
Yes.
on real quick. When you say not good at making money, what specifically did what are you specifically saying there that you did differently?
So their sales were good, their gross profit was good, their expenses were bad. They didn't have a great bottom line or a great net profit. So typically I would see them at less than 5% net profit, or more closely to 2 or 3% net profit. So the owners essentially bought themselves a job. They had some ownership perks, obviously, but they weren't good at keeping money in the bank and having that for growth.
You weren't tracking their expenses effectively, is kind of what I'm hearing from you.
Correct.
And that happens, and it's not uncommon in a lot of businesses, especially the automotive repair business, where it is a lot of technicians like myself who want to open up a shop, but we don't have the business experience, but we do it, right? And we work hard, and we bust our hump, 14 hours a day, but we haven't had that business training. And we don't know how to make money. We know how to take care of customers. We know how to sell work. We know how to make a lot of money, but we don't know how to manage it. So that can happen with a lot of shops where they're a successful shop on paper. They're just not putting anything to the bottom line.
Yep.
And it may be one of the cleanest locations. There may be 30 cars sitting outside every single second of the day. They just haven't learned how to manage their money.
Which is a lot of what we do in our pro service peer group. We talk about numbers and money a lot. So
Nick, what's your work-life balance? I'm sure this is a loaded question, but do you get to shut down completely, or are you still checking email and stuff when it comes to running multi-locations? Anything has changed?
well, it depends on my work life. So just to inform you, I sold my shops in April of last year. So it's almost been a year. And I retained the real estate and I had a really great multiplier. I got a 7.5 multiplier on mine. And now I collect lease payments. So now my full-time position is working in pro service as a coach and facilitator. Previously, though, in my business, my work-life balance was I was in growth mode, so I was really busy, right? But again, I did not have to go into the shops on a daily basis. Now I liked the people that were on my team, so I did go visit them quite often, but my office was at my home. So I had a lot of flexibility because I had a general manager in place. I had service center location managers in places. And so there's always a backup for everything if someone was sick or something happened. And I could always fill in if I needed, but I had a lot of flexibility in that because we had the right people in the right positions.
And that's a great question. And that's, something I'll talk quickly about, whether you're a single operator or a multi-shop operator or want to grow to 10 shops. You have to really look at that work-life balance. And unfortunately, that's not something I did. I was at my shop because I wanted to build this monster shop, which I did, but I was at my shop 14 hours a day for many, many years as we were growing that shop. And I really neglected my family. And it took me a long time to realize that I was neglecting my family. My thought was, I'm busting hump. I'm making tons of money. I'm giving my family everything I want, but I wasn't giving them me. And as you get older, you start realizing that, right? So I was fortunate before I sold my shop to really hone in on that, back down, and start spending more time with my wife and my kids. And before I decided to sell my shop. you know.
Yep. I guess that is interesting as we talk about the question there is how do you transition as you grow, like what your role becomes as an owner, right? So, you know, towards the end of it, before I sold my business, my role had changed dramatically because I wasn't managing a lot of people. I was mostly speaking with my leadership team, but I was painting the picture of where we were going for them, right? And then I was really involved in our community in a lot of different service clubs and nonprofits and just getting our name out there. But very rarely did I sell a brake job or anything like that unless they're a close friend or a longtime customer that had my personal cell phone number. But your role certainly changes, and I had to be that visionary for my team and say, "This is where we're going." I set the goals high and the standards high, and then I held my leadership team accountable to make that happen.
Nick, can I ask you a question?
Of course,
I've heard you use some terms that sound familiar to me through the EOS. Did you use the EOS system?
I did, yeah. So I implemented it myself after reading the book. It would have been easier if I would have hired someone, but I didn't want to spend that money. But I would highly recommend hiring an implementer.
So, okay, thanks.
I highly recommend if you are going to go to multi shop locations and you're going to be an MSO and you're going to continue to expand and that's your focus, that you look at EOS. Start by reading the book Traction, understand it, and start looking at EOS to as your growth
Yep.
plan.
And another good book would be Profit First by Mike Kalowitz. Just all about cash flow and having different bank accounts for different things in different banking institutions, just making it more difficult to spend too much money. So a couple good books there. Definitely add both of those to your list.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
We're having a lot of fun, so let's keep this thing going. We got 10 more minutes according to our bosses.
Nick, those two acquisitions you made after you and your father bought that partner out, were they like brownfields, like fix and flip type things, rehabs?
My third location was a beautiful location. Like Dan mentioned, it was so clean. They had cars stacked everywhere, on-site warehouse. It was 8 bays, gorgeous. Didn't have to do anything to it. But like I said, good business. They $2 million in sales annually, but they didn't know how to make money. So I essentially bought it for the real estate, furniture, and inventory. My third one was a kind of a niche market in the downtown location, or sorry, my fourth one was a niche location in downtown market. So a lot of white collar customers that would leave their vehicle all day, which was great for ARO. But when I bought that one, I approached the owners and we could not come to terms on a price. So patience was my friend in this one. They wanted a big price. I said, no way. And I think I hurt their feelings because then they just closed the doors and I just went in there and opened a new location. So I got that one for a couple $100,000 in equipment and inventory. But they had a great reputation for 30 years. And so again, direct mail pieces, all my marketing initially was, hey, we will take care of all these customers that were previously here. All your warranties are good through us. And that was to get the people back in the doors.
Is there anybody currently looking for a second location or a third location that's in the meeting today?
We are looking for number 4. And
Okay.
one of my next questions was, where do you find the money to buy these?
Lots of different ways you can find money. I always recommend having great relationships with your bankers, and not just one bank. Go and meet them all, right? Because at certain times there are going to be bankers that are more aggressive than the others, and then if they know that they're competing against each other, they're going to get way more aggressive. So that's number one, right? Number two, equity in real estate. That helps. You can take out cash on personal homes or commercial pieces of real estate. You can also get investors and bring in partners, key people as partners, and make them put some cash in. There's private equity, which is a huge thing in our industry right now. Just be careful with private equity because a lot of times when they get involved, they want to be in control.
Right. So you look how the big guys do it, right? And where are they getting their money from? And a lot of time it's from their land, their dirt. They're pulling equity out of their dirt. One thing I wouldn't recommend that a lot of companies do is they don't own their dirt. They go in, they buy a location, and they build what they want to build. Walgreens is a perfect example. And then they sell the building to a management company and lease it back for 30 years. The end game really should be holding that property so you have mailbox money. So I don't recommend doing that and leveraging your other properties too heavy, but there's money there in your properties.
Yep, absolutely.
And I highly recommend using local banks that have multiple locations, not going to the big guys like Chase and Bank of America, because you're not going to get good rates and they're going to want everything, they're going to want
Yep.
you to put your house up. They're going to want to take over your investments. They're going to want a lot out of you, where your local banks are much more geared towards business.
And they're much more forgiving, right? So if you run into a tight quarter and you are a little bit behind and you know that local bank, you can go in and be like, hey, I'm good for it. I just need a little bit more time. You go to Bank of America, they're not going to care.
Nope.
But I would say the cool thing about commercial real estate is that, yes, you can leverage that. So a lot of times you can buy another shop without actually taking any cash out of your own pocket because you can leverage that real estate. Where if you were in a residential setting, you'd still have to put 20-25% down for an investment property. Hi, Hunter.
I was just going to add to that, including your accounting firm or who's ever doing your bookkeeping to produce like financials to your bank can really just sometimes help. If you got really clean, accurate looking numbers, will never hurt your cause, and it can also help you get sometimes a little bit more preferred terms as well. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That and having a business plan, right? Having a great business plan when you go to a bank or you go to anybody for money, they want to see what you're going to be doing. So having a business plan, having clean books, having everything lined up is huge. And that also goes for the end of it, right? When you're ready to sell, you're going to get the highest level of money if you have good books.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we're getting pretty close here, but I think the last thing, and I kind of leave this with all of you, is as you think about going into multi-shops or you think about expanding, know what the end game is. Even if you're only in a single shop, know what your end game is and think long and hard about, what do I want? Where am I going with my business? What is the end goal? Because I think sometimes we don't really know as we walk in the shop every day and we're working our 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. Do we know where we're going with the shop? Do we know what the end game is? Something to really think about and put to paper of what is the end goal.
Absolutely.
I ask that question a lot in pro service.
Any comments or questions here?
Nick, when you sold yours, did you sell yours to private equity?
I sold mine to a friend of mine that had partnered with private equity. So yes.
And what was private equity's role in that? 51% ownership?
I don't know that. I don't know how much they own, but I know that they only meet with I call them the executives, the CEO, the CFO, They only meet with the top members of the team, and then they go tell them to make things happen. So they have lots of money. So if you're looking to get out, absolutely. And not all private equity is created equal. Okay. There's some really great private equity companies out there, but make sure they're a good fit for your organization if you're going to partner with them.
Right.
Most of them want controlling ownership, but some will take a minority shareholder stance.
I sold 100% ownership of mine to private equity, minus the building.
What was your multiple, Dan?
It was about 6.5.
Nick, what was yours?
7.5. But so here's the difference, right? Dan was a single location and an awesome single location, but you get higher multipliers with multiple locations.
Right. Mine getting 6.5 was because I had really, really good books and we made a lot of money. Typically that's not normal. Typically about 4 to 5 is normal for a single location. So that's something else to think about when you do think about the end game is multiple shops will bring you a bigger multiplier.
Cool. Well, I put another thing up here. If you guys want to hang out with Dan or myself more, we'd love to have you. We're the coaches and facilitators of our pro service peer group. We've got 80 awesome independent owners in our group right now. But we're pretty strict on making sure that people qualify and that they provide good value and engagement to the rest of our peers. So, but if you want to learn more, just head on over to Elite and yeah, happy to work with all of you. Anything else on that, Dan?
No. Yeah, if you want more information, just reach out to Elite. They can get you more information. We could have some conversations with you. What's unique about, Pro Service Peer Group is that it's not just Nick and I coaching you. You have 80 other people that you can bounce stuff off of.
And they're very smart. They're very smart. So.
And if you're not looking for a peer group, we have many levels of coaching as well. But I will say, if you don't have a coach or a coaching company you're working with, look strongly at it because it will change your life and your business. It did for me.
And me as well. I had a coach for 12 years.
Right. So, do we have any other questions before we wrap things up?
Are there MSO specific peer groups?
We are not an MSO specific peer group, but I will say probably 50% of our members are MSOs and collaborate amongst one another. We actually have a couple people in the meeting from the Pro Service peer group that are multi-shop owners. So,
and something that we would do with that, Patrick, is that we would create a subgroup of MSOs, and you guys would meet on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, probably, to go over the problems that you're having as opposed to a single shop owner.
Right. And they talk constantly. They work with one another. When we had our big Ignite conference this year, I think there was a group of 10 MSOs from Pro Service who went to dinner to talk strategy and stuff like that. Bill Stowell, who's in our meeting, he was at that dinner.
Yes, he was.
Does Elite have, I guess, a peer group for like general managers or managers of the stores?
Dan actually runs that one. There is a manager group.
Yeah, I actually have a managers group that I run as well.
And what level of managers are in there? Multi-store general managers or single store?
We have everything from manager advisors to multi-store managers.
And I will say that in the owners peer group, there are some managers that attend in the owners peer group as long as they meet the criteria to be in that group, right? If they're an actual true general manager or manager and not like a service writer manager,
which there's one of those in our meeting today too.
Yep. So perfect. Well, really appreciate all of you spending this time with us today. And again, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to chat more with all of you.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks
Thanks.
everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Take
you
care.
all. See you later. Take care.
Bye.
See you, Jeff.